A crow attacked someone on a university campus in Seattle, not randomly, not because the person walked too close to a nest. The crow targeted one specific person out of hundreds of students crossing the same courtyard that morning. It dove, struck, pulled away, circled, and came back for a second pass. The person had never touched that bird, had never been near it. But 5 years earlier, a researcher wearing a specific rubber mask had trapped and banded crows on that same campus as part of a study. The person being attacked that morning wasn't wearing the mask. Someone nearby was. The crow remembered the face. Not the body, not the clothing, not the location, the face. And it had been 5 years. Most people assume animals operate on instinct and short-term memory. Something hurts them, they flinch, they run, they move on. The science says something different. Some animals don't move on, they build a file. And what goes into that file, how long it stays there, and what it gets passed to is more sophisticated than anything the research community expected to find. In 2006, John Marsluff and his team at the University of Washington began an experiment that would run for nearly 2 decades. Researchers wore specific rubber caveman masks while trapping and banding American crows on campus. Other researchers wore different masks and simply walked past without interacting. The trapping itself was brief and non-injurious, standard banding protocol, but the crows treated it as an event worth recording permanently. Within days, crows that had been trapped began scolding anyone wearing the dangerous mask, not people in general, not researchers in general, that specific face. They ignored the neutral mask entirely. They expected the response to fade over a few months. It didn't. It escalated. Over the following years, crows that had never been trapped, crows that had never witnessed the original capture, began scolding and dive-bombing the dangerous mask. The information had transferred. Parent to offspring, flock member to flock member. A cultural memory of a specific human face was being maintained and distributed across a population of birds. 17 years after the original trapping events, crows on that campus were still responding to the mask. Marsluff's team eventually put the crows into a PET scanner, the first time brain imaging had been performed on an awake wild bird. When the crows saw the dangerous face, their amygdala, the region governing fear and threat memory, lit up with activity. The same neural architecture that processes threat memory in mammals was firing in a bird brain that diverged from the mammalian line over 300 million years ago. The crows weren't just remembering. They were running the same emotional circuitry that a human uses when recognizing someone who hurt them. The machinery is that old, and crows are not alone. In 2009, Douglas Levy at the University of Florida published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, showing that northern mockingbirds could identify a specific human who had approached their nest after as few as 2 30-second visits. On subsequent days, the birds would ignore every other person walking through the area and attack only the one individual who had previously come close to their eggs. When a new person approached on the 5th day, the aggression reset to baseline. The birds weren't becoming generally paranoid. They were filing one specific person under threat and leaving everyone else uncategorized. But the clearest evidence of what an animal can do with a memory of harm doesn't come from birds. It comes from elephants in Amboseli National Park, Kenya. Researchers led by Lucy Beats and Karen McComb spent years studying how elephants classify different groups of humans. The Maasai, a pastoralist people in the region, have a history of spearing elephants in conflicts over grazing land. The Kamba, an agricultural group nearby, have not. The researchers presented elephants with garments worn by Maasai men and garments worn by Kamba men. The elephants that detected the scent of Maasai clothing showed significantly greater fear responses, retreating, going tense, seeking cover in tall grass. When they detected Kamba scent, almost nothing. The researchers then played recordings of Maasai and Kamba voices through hidden speakers, same result. Maasai male voices triggered defensive bunching, heightened alertness, and evasive movement. Kamba voices produced minimal response. The elephants weren't reacting to humans as a category. They were sorting humans into subcategories based on the specific history of harm associated with each group and responding accordingly. The sorting went deeper than anyone anticipated. In the 2014 follow-up published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, McComb's team found that elephants distinguish not only between Maasai and Kamba, but between Maasai men, Maasai women, and Maasai boys. The voices of Maasai men, the demographic that actually carries spears and represents the lethal threat, triggered the strongest defensive response. Maasai women and boys, who have historically posed far less danger, triggered significantly less. The elephants were not just remembering which group had hurt them. They were remembering which specific demographic within that group was most dangerous, and they were calibrating their response with a precision that implies something more than simple fear conditioning. Now consider how long these memories last. In Pilanesberg National Park, South Africa, young elephants orphaned during culling operations in Kruger National Park during the 1970s and 1980s were translocated to new reserves. These elephants had witnessed the killing of their family members as calves. Decades later, researchers observed that these orphaned elephants exhibited behavior that paralleled post-traumatic stress in humans, heightened aggression, erratic social behavior. In some populations, young bulls who had been deprived of adult mentors and who had seen their families killed went on to attack and kill over 100 rhinoceroses in Pilanesberg. The trauma of what they had witnessed as calves, the specific memory of humans arriving and killing, had not faded. It had distorted their entire behavioral architecture for the rest of their lives. Researchers at the University of Sussex compared these traumatized populations to undisturbed herds in Amboselli and found measurable deficits in social decision-making, threat assessment, and group cohesion that persisted across decades. Elephants carry social memories that span the length of a human career. They recognize individuals they haven't seen in over 10 years. They return to the bones of deceased family members and touch them with their trunks, an organ containing over 40,000 muscles and a density of nerve endings comparable to human fingertips. They distinguish between a human who represents danger and one who does not. The cognitive equipment required to hold a memory of harm across that kind of timescale is not something elephants are lacking. The question has never been whether they can remember. The question is how much of what happened they actually retained. And it isn't only the animals with large brains that do this. In 2011, researchers at the University of Paris tested wild, untrained pigeons in a public park. Two researchers of similar build and appearance interacted with the birds over a series of sessions. One fed them, the other chased them away. The pigeons learned to distinguish between the two within days. When the researchers swapped clothing, the pigeons still avoided the hostile person and approached the kind one. They were reading faces, not outfits, not body language. Faces. A pigeon, an animal most people consider barely more than urban furniture, was sorting individual humans by their history of behavior and adjusting its response accordingly. What all of this points to is something the research community has been moving toward carefully for the past 2 decades. The capacity to remember a specific human who caused harm is not rare. It is not limited to primates or cetaceans or animals we consider intelligent. It appears across taxa, across brain architectures, across body sizes. Crows do it. Mockingbirds do it. Elephants do it. Pigeons do it. The mechanism varies. In crows, it involves the amygdala and cultural transmission. In elephants, it involves long-term social memory and olfactory classification. In mockingbirds, it involves rapid individual learning after minimal exposure, but the output is the same. A file gets created. A face, a scent, a voice goes into it. And the file does not close easily. The harder question is what sits inside that file beyond the raw data. Whether the crow scolding the mask 17 years later is experiencing something that resembles what a person feels when they see someone who hurt them. Whether the elephant retreating from a Maasai voice is running an emotion or simply executing a program. The neuroscience suggests the line between those two things is thinner than we once assumed. The amygdala firing in a crow's brain is doing what the amygdala does in yours. The stress hormones flooding an elephant's bloodstream at the sound of a specific human voice are the same chemicals that flood yours when you hear someone you associate with pain. The architecture is shared. Whether the experience is shared is something the data still can't reach. But the animals that survived did so because they remembered. And the ones that remembered best remembered the most dangerous thing on Earth. They remembered us. That's all for today. Anyway, please donate a subscribe to fund the next video.